Get on your knees. How could a black woman like you afford a Lincoln like this? Harlan roared across the gas station, then forced Naomi Carter onto the concrete even though the registration bore her name. He crushed the document in his hand and sneered as though his badge could turn prejudice into evidence and humiliation into justice. But Harlan did not know that Naomi had activated an emergency signal just before the handcuffs tightened around her wrists. 5 minutes later, the Pentagon called Ashford directly. The woman he had just treated like a thief was not only a retired military security specialist, she was also the wife of a four-star general. Would justice have come if Naomi had not held that status? What discrimination have you experienced or witnessed? Share it in the comments and tell us where you are watching from, because silence allows prejudice to grow. The late afternoon sunlight cast a pale golden glow over Ashford, a small Virginia town located a few hours' drive from Washington, D.C. Red brick storefronts stretched along Main Street. American flags hung motionless beneath the awnings, and heat continued rising from the pavement even as the sun began to sink. At 5:41 p.m., Naomi Carter, a 58-year-old black woman who had spent many years working as a military security analyst, drove her silver Lincoln Continental into Riverside Fuel. She wore a modest dark blue dress, her silver-streaked hair neatly gathered at the nape of her neck, and both hands positioned evenly on the steering wheel. No ostentatious jewelry, no hurried movements, only the disciplined bearing of someone accustomed to entering rooms where she was often judged before she had the chance to speak. Naomi was on her way to a scholarship ceremony for children from military families at the County Convention Center. Her husband was scheduled to deliver the keynote address, while Naomi had promised to arrive early to meet several widowed mothers she had previously supported. Before going there, however, she needed to fill the gas tank, buy a bottle of water, and collect the bouquet of irises she had ordered for Helen Ward, an old friend receiving treatment at Ashford Memorial Hospital. She stopped beside pump number 6 and turned off the engine. The moment the sound of the engine faded, Naomi noticed the eyes directed toward her. Two men standing near the ice machine stopped talking. A woman cleaning her windshield suddenly slowed her movements. Inside, a brown pickup parked near the store entrance. A middle-aged man watched her through his rearview mirror for far too long to be considered accidental. Naomi stepped out, locked the vehicle, and walked into the store. Her heels struck the faded concrete in a steady rhythm. The stares continued following her, but she did not turn around. Years of analyzing behavior and assessing threats had taught her to distinguish between harmless curiosity and the subtle change that passed through a room when she entered it. Inside Riverside Fuel, cool air from the air conditioner brushed her face. Donna Mills, the gas station's longtime cashier, stood behind the counter with a plastic name tag pinned crookedly to her shirt. When she saw Naomi, Donna offered no greeting. Her gaze swept over Naomi's dress and the leather purse in her hand before settling on the gleaming Lincoln outside the window. One bottle of water, the bouquet reserved under Carter, and $60 on pump number 6, Naomi said, placing her credit card and driver's license on the counter. Donna picked up the license, looked at the photograph, and then at Naomi. She turned the card over twice, held it beneath the light, and ran a finger along its plastic edge, as though inspecting a counterfeit. Donna then continued scrutinizing the credit card, compared the names on both cards, and glanced toward the Lincoln. "Is that vehicle yours?" she asked. "Yes," Naomi answered briefly. "Is there a problem?" Donna pursed her lips. "Just checking. There have been a lot of stolen cars lately." She spoke loudly enough for two customers near the counter to hear, yet offered no explanation for why Naomi was being examined more closely than everyone else. The transaction was approved on the first attempt. Donna still held the cards for several more seconds before reluctantly returning them. Naomi took the bottle of water and the pre-wrapped bouquet of irises, then turned toward the door. She did not argue, but she noted the camera above the counter, the digital clock displaying 5:44 p.m., and the man beside the potato chip display who had heard the entire exchange. As the glass door closed behind Naomi, Donna immediately picked up the phone. The nearby customer heard her quietly report that a suspicious woman was using a potentially stolen credit card and driving a vehicle that did not appear to belong to her. He looked toward the door, discomfort briefly crossing his face, but eventually lowered his gaze to the item in his hands. Silence was always easier than intervening. Outside, Naomi carefully placed the bouquet on the back seat, then opened the fuel door. The man in the pickup had now stepped out. He looked through the store window, saw Donna still speaking on the phone, and observed how the others were watching Naomi. A feeling in his gut prompted him to take out his phone and begin recording. Naomi heard birds lifting away from the power line before a short, piercing siren tore through the air. Less than 3 minutes after Donna's call, two patrol cars raced into Riverside Fuel. One braked sharply in front of the Lincoln, while the other parked diagonally behind it, blocking every possible exit. The first door flew open. Sergeant Travis Harlan, the shift commander notorious for mistaking arrogance for police work, stepped out with one hand already resting on his gun. He looked at the black woman standing motionless beside the pump, as though the verdict had been written before the investigation had even begun, then shouted, "Step away from the stolen vehicle immediately." Travis Harlan walked straight toward Naomi, his hand still resting on his holster, as though she had been caught committing a serious felony rather than merely standing beside a gas pump. He did not ask whether she needed assistance or politely request an explanation. Following behind him was Eli Mercer, a young officer who had transferred to the patrol shift less than a year earlier. Mercer looked at the Lincoln boxed in by two police vehicles, then at Naomi, standing still with her hands held in front of her chest. Caution was clearly visible on his face. There were no broken windows, no signs of forced entry, and certainly no dangerous woman matching what the initial dispatch had implied. "Put your hands on the hood," Harlan ordered. Naomi did not move, but she slowly raised both hands higher so they remained clearly visible. "I will comply with any lawful command," she said. "But first, please tell me what law I have violated." Harlan's jaw tightened. "We received a report of a potentially stolen vehicle." Naomi tilted her head toward the passenger door. "The registration and insurance documents are in the glove compartment. If you wish, I can retrieve them." "Don't move," Harlan shouted. Naomi remained exactly where she was. He immediately turned toward the crowd. "She is refusing to cooperate." Harlan yanked open the Lincoln's door, leaned inside, and rummaged through the glove compartment. He found the registration bearing Naomi Carter's name, a valid insurance policy, and a copy of her driver's license that perfectly matched the woman standing before him. Beneath them was a retirement identification card from a Department of Defense Security Analysis Agency. Meanwhile, Mercer entered the license plate number into the computer inside the patrol car. The results appeared almost immediately. The vehicle was legally owned by Naomi, had not been reported stolen, and was not connected to any criminal case. Sergeant Mercer said quietly, "The plate is clean. The registered owner's name matches." Naomi assumed the investigation was over, but Harlan studied the retirement card for longer, then turned toward her with renewed suspicion. This could be counterfeit. He held up the card as though he had just discovered contraband. "Or you could be impersonating a federal employee." Naomi kept her voice even. "There is an official verification number on the back. You can call it now." Harlan stepped closer. "Do not tell me how to do my job. That defiant attitude is not helping you." Around them, more phones were raised. The man beside the pickup continued recording without interruption. The more witnesses there were, the louder Harlan spoke as though volume could replace evidence. Mercer approached and lowered his voice. "We should wait for dispatch to verify the card before we do anything else." Harlan spun toward him. "I don't need a rookie teaching me procedure. Control the crowd." Then he looked at Naomi. "Turn around." She asked one final time, "What am I being arrested for?" Harlan did not answer. He violently twisted her arm behind her back, locked the handcuffs around both wrists, and tightened them another notch. The metal bit deeply into her skin. A murmur passed through the crowd, but Naomi did not resist. She memorized the badge number on Harlan's chest patrol car, 32, the camera beneath the canopy, and every face recording the scene. Harlan yanked the purse from Naomi's shoulder and emptied its contents onto the hood, which was still hot from the sun. Her wallet, keys, lip balm, eyeglass case, and phone clattered against the metal. When he turned away to inspect the documents again, Naomi subtly shifted her hip and moved the phone closer to the edge of her hand. With 2 precise taps on the lock screen, she activated a secret emergency protocol established during her years working with the Department of Defense. 5 minutes after the handcuffs closed around Naomi's wrists, the radio on Harlan's shoulder suddenly crackled. An unfamiliar voice, cold and decisive, echoed across the gas station. "Unit 32, confirm immediately. Are you detaining Mrs. Naomi Carter?" The moment Naomi tapped the lock screen for the second time, the emergency protocol activated without making a sound. The phone transmitted the GPS coordinates of Riverside Fuel, the precise timestamp, and a signal confirming that the device's owner was being physically restrained. The front-facing camera simultaneously captured a single image, Naomi in handcuffs beside the Lincoln Travis Harlan, standing near the hood and patrol car, 32 blocking the vehicle from behind. The data was encrypted and sent to a predetermined security contact list. Harlan was still searching her purse. He had no idea that before he seized the phone, the device had already transmitted everything the proper authorities needed to understand what was happening. Inside a secure conference room at the Pentagon, General Marcus Carter, a four-star general serving in the United States military, and Naomi's husband was preparing to leave for the scholarship ceremony when the secure device on the table illuminated. He opened the alert and saw his wife standing beneath the gas station canopy with her hands restrained behind her back. Marcus did not pound the table or raise his voice. He enlarged the patrol car number, read the timestamp, and forwarded the image to the head of security. "Verify Naomi's status," he said. "Contact military legal counsel. Order the preservation of all evidence." His voice was low and steady, but everyone in the room immediately went into action. Within 5 minutes, the military liaison office contacted the Ashford Dispatch Center. The Department of Defense Security Agency confirmed that Naomi's retirement identification card was authentic and remained valid for verification purposes. The Virginia Department of Public Safety received a priority notification, while the Ashford police chief was instructed to preserve all body camera footage, radio logs, and surveillance video from Riverside Fuel. Outside the gas station, Harlan's radio sounded again. Unit 32 confirmed the identity of the individual being detained and repeat the federal verification code Echo 79er. Harlan's face stiffened. He looked at Naomi, then at the card in his hand. "The subject has documents that may be counterfeit," he replied. "I'm transporting her to the station for verification." Harlan snatched the phone from the hood and placed it inside an evidence bag. "You are being detained for investigation of impersonating a federal employee," he announced, as though a new accusation could erase the license plate results. He pulled Naomi toward the patrol car, forced her into the back seat, and slammed the door. Mercer stood nearby, his eyes still fixed on the computer screen displaying confirmation that the Lincoln had not been reported stolen. "Sergeant?" "Dispatch just verified the federal code," he said. Harlan turned toward him and lowered his voice threateningly. "We finished the report first. After that, they can verify whatever they want." The patrol car left Riverside Fuel as the crowd continued recording on their phones. On the way to the station, Harlan repeatedly checked the rearview mirror. His fingers tightened around the steering wheel, and his knee trembled slightly whenever the radio crackled. "She was aggressive and non-compliant from the beginning," he told Mercer. "You saw that, didn't you?" Mercer did not confirm it. He only replied that the report should be based on the camera footage. When he noticed that his body camera's indicator light was off, Mercer quietly reactivated the device. From the back seat, Naomi observed every movement. Harlan was no longer behaving like a man who believed he was right. He was racing to finish writing his lie before the truth arrived. At the Ashford Police Department, Police Chief Rebecca Sloan, who had led the agency for 6 years, received a direct call from the state's Director of Public Safety. Within a few sentences, she learned that the woman being transported to the station was the wife of a 4-star general and that the Pentagon had responded in exactly 5 minutes. Sloan sprang to her feet, the pen falling from her hand. Outside her office, the intake door opened. Harlan was leading Naomi toward the booking desk, still attempting to project authority, even though sweat had appeared along his temples. Sloan rushed through the doorway, her voice echoing across the room. "Stop the entire booking process. Remove Mrs. Carter's handcuffs immediately." The key trembled in the desk officer's hand as he removed Naomi's handcuffs. 2 dark red marks had formed around her wrists. Rebecca Sloan saw them but immediately shifted her gaze toward Harlan, as though the first thing that needed to be addressed was not Naomi's injuries, but the disaster descending on the police department. "Mrs. Carter, this was clearly an unfortunate misunderstanding," Sloan said. "We can cancel the booking process and escort you out through the back entrance." Naomi gently rubbed her wrists. "The vehicle legally belongs to me. My documents were verified. I did not resist. Your sergeant knew there was no evidence of a crime and arrested me anyway. That was not a communication error." Harlan stepped forward, trying to reclaim the authoritative voice that had disappeared during the drive to the station. "The vehicle matched the description of a suspicious car." Sloan turned toward him. "When was that alert issued?" Harlan opened his mouth but could not provide a time. The dispatch log contained no report of a stolen vehicle before Donna's call. Mercer stood outside the doorway with one hand near the camera on his chest. He knew Harlan had seen the license plate results, but saying so would mean defying a man who could determine the future of his career. Sloan ordered the body camera footage, radio recordings, and complete dispatch logs seized before anyone could leave the station. The telephone on the desk was placed on speaker. Marcus's voice came through with a calmness that silenced the entire room. "No footage is to be deleted or altered. No timestamps are to be changed in any report. No officer is to contact a witness privately. Naomi's attorney must be present before she signs any document. Sloan tried to reassure him that the department was handling the matter internally. Marcus interrupted her. My wife does not deserve fair treatment because she is married to a general. She deserves fair treatment because it is the right of every citizen. If your badges only know how to respect people with connections, then the problem here is bigger than one arrest. 20 minutes later, Maya Bennett, a civil rights attorney known for her cases against police misconduct, entered the station carrying a black document case. Sloan had placed a form in front of Naomi stating that she had been released and the matter had been resolved. Maya pulled the document away before Naomi could pick up the pen. She read the file, then stopped at the line listing the case status. The charges have not been dismissed, Maya said. They have merely been changed to pending review. That classification would allow the department to quietly reinstate the charges after the media left. Sloan called it a temporary procedure. Maya called it what it was, an escape route prepared in advance. Camera flashes began appearing beyond the glass doors. Lena Ortiz, an investigative reporter for the Ashford Chronicle, had arrived after receiving video from a witness at Riverside Fuel. The footage showed Naomi standing still while Harlan shouted at her, but it did not capture the entire document verification process. Sloan understood that the gap was her last opportunity. She announced Harlan's temporary suspension with pay to reduce pressure, while the legal department began drafting a statement claiming that Naomi had failed to comply with multiple lawful commands. Soft administrative language was being used to paint a harmless layer over the handcuffs. In the rear hallway, Harlan stopped Mercer outside the report-writing room. He lowered his voice. She suddenly reached into the vehicle. We believe there might be a weapon. That's why the situation escalated. Mercer looked at him. But that didn't happen. Harlan moved closer. You're young. An inconsistent report could end your career. Just write that her movement made us fear for our safety. Mercer did not answer. His camera had recorded Naomi asking permission before retrieving the documents, Harlan forbidding her to move, and then accusing her of refusing to cooperate. It had also clearly recorded the license plate results being read aloud before the handcuffs appeared. An investigator from the Virginia Department of Public Safety placed a statement form in front of Mercer. The pen rested between his fingers, but never touched the paper. Through the thin wall, Harlan's voice continued, firmly repeating the story about a sudden threat. Mercer looked at the red light on his camera, then at the blank line, requesting a description of the grounds for the arrest. The silence lasted several more seconds. Finally, he set down the pen, looked up, and said, Sergeant Harlan is asking me to lie. Night settled over Ashford, but the lights inside the police department remained stark white. In the second-floor conference room, the legal department began constructing a version of events that could protect Travis Harlan. The arrest was described as a response to information from a credible source. Naomi was labeled a subject who did not fully comply with instructions. Not a single line mentioned that the license plate had been confirmed as clean, that the registration bore her name, or that her Department of Defense identification card carried a valid verification number. The fact that the Pentagon made contact 5 minutes later also disappeared. By omitting a few facts, they were attempting to turn prejudice into professional judgment and transform an arrest without lawful grounds into a difficult decision made under uncertain circumstances. Maya did not give them time to finish constructing that story. She demanded the complete dismissal of every charge, refusing to accept the pending review status, then sent evidence preservation notices to the police department, the dispatch center, Riverside Fuel, the businesses surrounding the gas station, and the Virginia Department of Public Safety. All footage calls, internal messages, access logs, and report drafts had to remain intact. Near midnight, Marcus flew to Ashford aboard a military flight that had already been scheduled for other official business. He entered Maya's temporary office, looked at the handcuff marks on his wife's wrists, and said, "This is your fight. I will support you, but I will not stand in front of you." Naomi decided not to return home yet. She sat with Maya and Lena in a small conference room, reconstructing the entire timeline from the moment the Lincoln entered Riverside Fuel until Sloan ordered the handcuffs removed. Naomi remembered precisely that the clock above the counter read 5:44 p.m. when Donna held onto her cards. The call was made immediately afterward. 2 patrol cars arrived less than 3 minutes later. Lena placed each timestamp on the board, then contacted the people who had been present at the gas station. By 1:20 a.m., she had located Caleb Ross, the truck driver, who had stood beside the brown pickup and begun recording before the police arrived. Caleb's video began with Naomi leaving the store carrying a bottle of water and a bouquet of irises. She did not argue, threaten anyone, or engage in any suspicious behavior. Through the glass, Donna could be seen holding the phone to her ear and pointing toward the Lincoln while saying that the vehicle didn't look like it belonged to her. The video continued as Harlan stepped out with his hand resting on his gun and accused Naomi before asking her name. Every time one justification was disproven, he offered another. The vehicle was stolen, the credit card was suspicious, the documents were counterfeit, and finally, she was impersonating a federal employee. Caleb agreed to provide the original file and sign a sworn statement. Just before dawn, the group returned to Riverside Fuel. The station's security system retained data for only 48 hours before automatically overwriting it. The owner initially refused, citing privacy and concerns about negative publicity, but Maya's preservation notice left him no choice. The interior camera clearly showed that Donna had not witnessed any crime. She had merely looked at Naomi, looked at the Lincoln, and then called the police. The exterior camera captured Harlan handcuffing Naomi, even though her hands had remained visible at all times, and she had never resisted. As the handcuffs tightened around her wrists, the bouquet of irises remained on the back seat, a detail so ordinary that it became painful amid the display of power. At the police department, the radio data was extracted at the same time. No stolen vehicle alert had existed before Harlan arrived at Riverside Fuel. The phrase, potentially stolen vehicle, first appeared when he himself used it at the scene. Mercer's statement also confirmed that Harlan had seen the valid registration and heard that the license plate came back clean before ordering the arrest. Investigators compared the first draft of his report with the version revised after the Pentagon's call. The phrase aggressive behavior had been added only after Harlan learned that Naomi was married to a four-star general. The truth did not change over time. Only his report did. By late morning state, investigators demanded Harlan's complete personnel file. A thick stack of documents was placed on the table, the corners yellowed from years of neglect. Inside were complaints that had been closed for insufficient evidence, traffic stops that had produced no charges, and reports revised after review by supervisors. The victims' names were different, but the pattern was identical. Black drivers' vague reasons for the stops, and claims of resistance that did not appear on camera. Naomi was not the first person Harlan had targeted and then erased with a rewritten account. She was simply the first to possess enough evidence to force his old files open. Travis Harlan's personnel file spanned more than a decade, but the phrases inside repeated with chilling consistency. He had been accused of making traffic stops without cause, unlawfully searching vehicles, using discriminatory language, and threatening citizens if they filed complaints. A black delivery driver had been detained on the side of the road for 40 minutes, even though his license plate was completely valid. A veteran had been forced to open his trunk without a search warrant. A single mother stated that Harlan had told her he could make her life difficult if she continued to object. Every complaint had been downgraded to a procedural misunderstanding or a difference in perception or closed for lack of independent evidence. Maya read every file, marking the name of the person who approved the decision and the date each case was closed. The pattern gradually became clear. Harlan invented a justification after initiating the stop, reported that the detainee had behaved threateningly, and then relied on a colleague's word to discredit the complaint. This is no longer an officer who made a bad decision, Maya told Naomi. This is a pattern of abuse protected by the system. Lena began contacting the people who had previously filed complaints. At first, most of them refused. They had spent years trying to forget what it felt like to stand beside the road with their hands on the hood of a car. But after watching the video of Naomi being handcuffed at Riverside Fuel, 3 agreed to provide formal statements. Mercer also made his choice. He turned over a copy of his body camera footage messages in which Harlan instructed them to agree on how to describe the threat and 2 different versions of the report. The first stated only that Naomi had questioned the grounds for the stop. The second, revised after the Pentagon made contact, transformed that question into aggressive behavior. Technical data showed that Harlan's camera had been turned off while he searched the vehicle and handcuffed Naomi. He called it an equipment malfunction, but Mercer's camera and 6 different angles from the gas station filled the gap. The minutes Harlan wanted to erase became the clearest documented portion of the incident. Inside the interrogation room, Donna finally admitted that she had never seen Naomi commit a crime. There was no evidence that Naomi had used a fraudulent card, forced open the vehicle, or avoided any questions. Donna had called the police because she did not believe that a black woman could own an expensive Lincoln. At the same time, Rebecca Sloan held a press conference and declared that Harlan was an individual who had acted contrary to policy and that the Ashford Police Department did not tolerate discriminatory conduct. But internal documents contradicted the distance she was attempting to create. Sloan's signature appeared on numerous decisions closing previous complaints. She had not merely known about the warnings. She had personally helped make them disappear beneath harmless administrative language. By the afternoon, attorneys from the Federal Civil Rights Division had arrived in Ashford. The investigation expanded to include unlawful arrest, falsification of reports, civil rights violations, obstruction of evidence preservation, and conspiracy to coordinate false statements. Harlan's work computer was sealed. The official phones of command officers were seized. Investigators began comparing the timestamps of report revisions with internal calls made after Naomi's identity was disclosed. Each new piece of data showed that the police department had not merely responded to an act of misconduct. It had tried to build a wall around it, just as it had done with previous complaints. In the newsroom of the Ashford Chronicle, Lena organized the investigation chronologically and verified every detail through multiple independent sources. Maya agreed to release the footage only after the original file had been sealed by investigators. When the article appeared, the image of Naomi standing still with both hands visible was placed beside footage of Harlan shouting and rejecting her valid documents. The video spread nationwide within hours. Major news outlets replayed the moment the handcuffs closed around her wrists. Naomi's composure made Harlan's aggression even harder to justify. Ashford could no longer describe the encounter as uncertain. Outside the police department, protesters and reporters filled the sidewalk as a convoy from the state prosecutor's office entered the parking lot. Inside, Harlan remained seated beside his union representative, believing that he faced only a disciplinary meeting. The main doors opened. A prosecutor placed 2 arrest warrants on the intake desk, while investigators carrying handcuffs stood behind him. One warrant bore the name Travis Harlan. The other remained face down. When Rebecca Sloan stepped out of her office and saw the group waiting, all color immediately drained from her face. Harlan would not be the only person placed in handcuffs that day. The state prosecutor determined that sufficient grounds existed to charge Travis Harlan with unlawful detention, falsification of an official report, civil rights violations, witness intimidation, and obstruction of an investigation. The second arrest warrant belonged to Lieutenant Wade Kessler, Harlan's direct supervisor, who had helped him revise the report and remove unfavorable timestamps. Rebecca Sloan was not arrested, but she was immediately suspended for previously disregarding multiple complaints and attempting to minimize what had happened to Naomi. In a single morning, the wall protecting Harlan began collapsing under the weight of the very signatures that had built it. Harlan was summoned to the police department, believing that he was merely required to attend a disciplinary meeting. He wore a neatly pressed uniform, polished his badge, and entered through a side door to avoid the crowd of reporters. 2 state investigators were already waiting inside the conference room. One after another, they presented the Riverside fuel footage, Mercer's body camera recording dispatch logs, the different versions of the report with their editing timestamps, and the messages instructing Mercer to coordinate his statement. Each piece of evidence destroyed another part of the story Harlan had constructed. He sat rigidly, his fingers repeatedly touching the edge of his badge, as though the piece of metal could still protect him. It was a tense situation, Harlan said. Donna provided false information. I had to make a decision in seconds. An investigator pushed the license plate results toward him. The initial information may have been false, but you continued the arrest after learning that the vehicle belonged to Mrs. Carter, that the insurance was valid, and that the federal identification contained an official verification number. Harlan shifted to claiming that Naomi had behaved defiantly. The camera showed that she had only asked what law she had violated. He then cited officer safety. The video showed that both her hands had remained visible at all times. Nothing remained uncertain except the justification Harlan was trying to invent. Police officers must be allowed to exercise judgment, he snapped. You cannot handcuff me over a decision I made in the field. A police department representative stood and placed a termination notice on the table. You no longer represent this agency. Your authority as a police officer is terminated immediately. The door opened. 2 state troopers entered and ordered Harlan to stand and place his hands behind his back. The handcuffs closed with a cold, sharp click. The same metal he had once tightened around Naomi's wrists as a display of power now locked firmly around his own. Harlan was escorted through the lobby along the same path Naomi had taken after her release. Outside, dozens of cameras turned toward him. Flashbulbs reflected off the handcuffs as he lowered his head and descended the steps. Naomi then stood before the press with Marcus quietly behind her. Justice should not depend on whether the victim has a powerful husband or a camera recording what happened, she said. If the system corrects itself only after learning who I am, then that system is still failing to protect the people who need it most. The city announced an independent review of every traffic stop conducted by Harlan, mandatory anti-bias training, an automatic camera preservation system, and an external board to review complaints. Maya emphasized that reform could not replace legal accountability. The civil rights lawsuit would continue. As the vehicle carrying Harlan drove away, Marcus opened the Lincoln's door for his wife. Naomi sat in the passenger seat, looked at the fading red marks around her wrists, and said, "Don't take me home yet." Marcus waited. She looked directly toward the road running through Ashford. "Take me back to Riverside Fuel." Less than a day earlier, that was where the handcuffs had closed around her wrists. Late that afternoon, the silver Lincoln Continental pulled into Riverside Fuel once again. Marcus sat in the passenger seat, remaining silent so Naomi could decide for herself how to confront the place where she had been humiliated. Naomi slowed down and parked near pump number 6 inches, the exact spot where Harlan had handcuffed her less than a day earlier. The hum of the air conditioner still drifted through the glass doors. Gas nozzles still clicked into their holders, and amber sunlight still stretched across the concrete. The setting had not changed. Only the people within it no longer behaved as they had the day before. Naomi stepped out of the vehicle. No one openly looked at her with contempt. The two men who had previously stood beside the ice machine immediately looked away. Whispers turned into uncomfortable silence. The man who drove the brown pickup recognized her, gave a slight nod, and stepped aside to clear her path. Marcus remained inside the vehicle. His presence was steady enough for Naomi to know that she was not alone, yet distant enough for the moment to belong entirely to her. The gas station owner emerged from his office, his face tense. He apologized, announced that Donna had been fired, and promised that every employee would receive new anti-discrimination training. Naomi listened without offering immediate forgiveness. "You changed after the video was released," she said. "Not when your employees saw something wrong happening directly in front of them." The owner lowered his eyes. No explanation could alter that truth. Naomi purchased another bottle of water and a new bouquet of irises to replace the flowers that had wilted while her vehicle was being held. This time, no one examined her card longer than necessary. Before getting back into the vehicle, Naomi stopped beside pump number 6. She looked down at the place where she had once stood with both wrists restrained behind her back. She had not returned to prove that she deserved to be there. She had returned to affirm that no cashier, police officer, or silent crowd had the right to decide that she did not belong. Marcus stepped out as she returned to the vehicle. "The Pentagon responded in 5 minutes," he said, "but it was your composure and preparation that kept the truth alive long enough for them to find it." Naomi placed the bouquet on the back seat. "What about the people who do not have a general for a husband, an attorney, or a camera?" she asked. "They deserve protection before anyone learns who they are." The expanded investigation had begun, reviewing Harlan's previous arrests, opening a path for victims who had once been ignored to speak out and reclaim justice. As the sun set, the Lincoln pulled away from pump number 6. Naomi did not flee Riverside Fuel. She left after reclaiming her dignity and forcing the system to accept responsibility. Because true power does not lie in the rank of the person standing behind a victim, but in a system that protects the truth before the victim's identity is ever revealed.